Hi. Um, oh, wait. Was this? Sorry. Yeah, this is me. Um, as they said in the introduction, I became the first female founder, actually the first female founder in Sweden to IPO a company, but also the first femtech company on the stock market, which is a bit, I think, disturbing. I'm here today to talk about how to build a scalable global solution for mental health. How many of you in the audience are entrepreneurs? Okay, good. And how many of you would like to build a global scalable solution for your company? Okay, perfect. Then you're in the right place. So I wanted to share with you some of the learnings that I've made along the way as an entrepreneur. I started out 10 years ago in China. Our first solution was a virtual midwife that we launched for Chinese pregnant women. So I would like to suggest that first you choose to solve a problem that is beyond borders, that is shared by people all over the world. And it doesn't have to be a big problem, because if you solve something that's beyond borders, then even a small niche target group could become big in volumes. For instance, I'm not saying that this is a small problem, but stress. One of our solutions is focusing on stress, but this is a very global issue. And how stress affects us as people and affect us in the human body is the same. No matter what causes the stress in your life, the reactions that you're going to have is going to be the same, no matter where you live. Or pregnancy. For me, as a Swedish entrepreneur, to be able to go to China and build a solution that I wish I've had in Stockholm when I was pregnant with my second child. And the solution I made is still one of the most popular apps in China. And why? Because a woman who is pregnant, it doesn't matter if she lives in a penthouse in Sao Paulo or a village in Africa, what she goes through during the pregnancy in her body is going to be the same. And the concerns and worries about her health is also going to be the same, no matter the setting. Infertility is another one of these issues that goes beyond borders. And I would suggest that when you start something that you want to have scalable is that you're aware of your own bias. The reason I'm showing you this picture is these are my two daughters. They are now 12 and 14, but they were young when I moved to China to start Bonzun there. And there I became aware of what's unique about me as a Swede. I've been working abroad for most of my life. I consider myself an individual that is aware of cultural differences, but it wasn't until I moved to China and I brought up my kids in that settings that I became aware of things that I consider normal and that I thought was everyone thinks like that, but in China, that was considered super, super weird. And that is, I think, why I've been able to, in our product, take away everything that has to do with culture, everything that has to do with religion, everything that has to do with politics. Goes without saying that if you want to have a business in China, maybe you should stay off politics. But for instance, now in Bonzun, we celebrate New Year's Eve in 3 different dates, just in our staff. And we're a small company, we're only 16 people, but we have people in Shanghai, in Kathmandu, and Sweden. And those countries celebrate New Year's Eve on different dates. So if you want to have a global solution, then just stay off everything. That's Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, Happy Easter. Because if you say Merry Christmas, someone who is Jewish may feel excluded. And if you say Happy New Year on the wrong date, then people will feel excluded. And I think when it comes to especially health apps or health solutions, that the user want to feel that this is made for them, because everyone feels like, you know, that they are a unique condition. They want to have things that feel very localized. So that would be my first suggestion. Another one is that you need to be faster than your competition. But how do you do that when you work in health and in health tech? Because blitzscaling is all about, you know, building as you go. But you also need to be sure that you have something that's safe. That's why I'm showing you this image. This is little baby London. She's surrounded by the syringes, the medicine that her mother had to take in order to conceive her. And this is, I think, shows the challenges of infertility. Statistically, some of you in the audience are aware of this and have gone through this. And also statistically, you went through this without telling your friends. You went through this alone, and you didn't tell anyone about the miscarriages that you had along the way. One of these syringes, if it's taken 20 minutes too late, the whole treatment is spoiled. And that is why if you build an app to support a patient through IVF, you cannot have any bugs. It's so important that everything you do is accurate. And then how do you do that if you're going to blitzscale and be faster than your competition? When we started Bonzun 10 years ago, we did the world's first pregnancy app. And it was the first one. It was evidence-based. Everything we did was approved by doctors. And all of a sudden, along came competitors with inaccurate information, things that was just made up. They mixed evidence-based information with rumors and whatever. And you had to navigate through that, being slower than them if you want to be accurate. But the thing is, that is what you have to have foundation with accuracy and safety, and then decide on where you're going to be fast. So I would suggest, if you're not aware of this method when you start to work, is that you work with OKR. How many of you have heard of OKR? Okay, those who haven't, if you're building a company, then Google it, buy the books, look at TED Talks, and find out what it is, because it's fantastic. So what it is basically is that you agree on the long-term goals. For instance, in Bonzun, it's life improved. We want a world where everyone has better control over their life and well-being through smart, easy-to-use devices developed with the latest evidence-based knowledge. So in our company, we know that everything has to be evidence-based. And then we agree on the midterm goals and company objectives and company results. And now, since we're a listed company, this is also something that we communicate to our shareholders. But when it comes to team objectives and team key results and the projects and the tasks, that is set by the team and the individuals. And there it's complete freedom, because you have to be super, super fast, because you have this really slow foundation of safety, and in between you need to be really fast on your execution. Another thing is, you want to have a scalable solution, is you need to prepare for multiple languages from start. So our first product, the virtual midwife, we built it in English and Chinese at the same time. So we had the English version and the Chinese version. And then I was approached by a Swedish insurance company who wanted us to launch in Sweden. So we had everything ready, but then we hadn't really figured out the language thing. We wasn't prepared for, and this, I should also say to our defense, that this was a long time ago. All these tools that exist now, like Localize and these translating companies, they didn't exist at the time. But when we translated from English to Swedish, we had to translate and then copy and paste it. So now we have, when we built our other products, the IVF solution, we have prepared the solution to be made for hundreds of languages. So we can launch a new language within 4 days because it doesn't require any coding. Everything that's language related is put aside, and then we can have translators who translate, and we can have auditors, and we can have medical, sorry, English is not my native tongue. We can have people who are, researchers and skilled. They can look at the accuracy. And then when everyone has approved, then it's launched, and it doesn't take any time from the coders. Next thing is, how do you measure success? When do you know when something is good enough and when you're going to scale it? I don't know if you guys are probably familiar with this, but this is how we do. If you're interested, I can send this over to you if you're not only aware of this, but just send me a message on LinkedIn, and I'll give you this for free. This is how we work. We look at the metrics of everything, and when the KPIs are perfect, when we have the churn and the conversion rates, everything shows that the product is working. That is when we push the marketing. So for each market, you test slowly and then you see it, because you don't want to pour marketing money on something that's just going to be like a shredder of money. Like, you want to have a small money-making machine, but that actually takes time. And if this was, 7 years ago, you could just pour in new money in this paper shredder, and then you could have users. But right now, you really need to make sure that you have bang for the bucks. So this is what we do, measure everything. But I would also say something which I think is true. I'm not only saying this because of, we've been going through COVID and war, and I IPO'd my company in the worst stock market ever. But I think the value of your company is the sum of the problems you're solving. So if you work with an issue that you really care about, along the way, just always remember who you are helping and why you're doing this. And if we're all focusing on solving real problems that actually exist and need a solution, instead of just building a company to sell something, and then in the end you're creating new problems with the things you're solving. So I think if we're all looking in this, then I think we're going to be able to create a better world. That's what I had, and I hope some of you find this helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie, so much. Thank you. We have one question, and you still have time to write your questions to Voremo, but the one question is, what was the first regulatory challenge you faced?
The first regulatory challenge?
Yes.
Wow, this was a good... So I must admit, as an entrepreneur, I suffer from something that's shared by many entrepreneurs. It's called negative emotion fading bias. Oh. It's like I forget really fast things that happen along the way. So I kind of have a notebook of learnings. But the first regulatory challenge, actually, to be honest, since we launched in China, at a time where no one was talking about digital health. In China, they did not have any privacy laws. Oh. Everything was just the Wild West. So we kind of built it, but still having this Swedish privacy setting, because we kind of knew that this is not going to last. So when GDPR came, we were already prepared, and we're working that way. So I would say that we haven't had any regulatory changes that affected us in a negative way. Quite the opposite. I think the regulatory changes that were made, we were so grateful for, because it kind of filtered out competition that was not serious.
Yeah.
But I think that the biggest issue for us was when Apple and Facebook couldn't agree on how they would share information. So our lookalike ads weren't as effective.
Yeah.
So I guess that was a regulatory change that affected us indirectly, because they hadn't agreed, and we've, had used that in our ads for a long time. So yeah, all of a sudden our campaigns became more expensive. Yeah.
Okay, I have another question. Wasn't China a big challenge by itself because of their pregnancy policies?
Because of what?
Pregnancy policies.
Policies?
Policies, yeah. It's like, you can have
no, actually,
one child, I think it's the maximum.
Yeah, well, I would say China was a challenge, because it's always a challenge to move to another country, and especially if you don't know the language, and especially if it's not part of the free world. And I was a single mom with 2 kids, so that was, big challenges in itself. But when it came to the pregnancy policies, the one-child policy, we knew when we came there, when I say we, it was actually me, but that the one-child policy wouldn't last forever, and that was actually beneficial for us. Also, I should say that when you only have one child, that one child is supposed to support the parents and the grandparents. So it becomes, that child is going to support 6 people, and it's so important to have that child healthy.
Yeah.
But what we did in China, because of the system they have, they don't talk about parenting, they talk about grandparenting. So we actually had a grandparent version of the pregnancy app, so that the grandparents could follow the pregnancy and also help.
Okay. And the last question, what made you choose precisely China as the first market instead of more culturally and geographically closer ones?
Well, Bonzun is not my first company. My previous company had a business model that only worked in Sweden, that couldn't scale. And when I got the idea of Bonzun, I wanted to have a global solution. And my thought was, if I launch in a big market, then I will be able to, be bigger faster. And so I kind of looked at the world like, okay, where do we have a lot of pregnant women? Okay, we can have Spain, Spanish, South America, or China. And I was like, China, and I was so curious about China.
Yeah.
And I figured that, there's 22 million pregnant women a year. In 5 years, I can reach 100 million pregnant women. Instead of in Sweden, we have 300,000 pregnant women. So it was just the size of the market.
Of the market, yeah. Yeah.
And also, I think the enthusiasm that kind of comes with a vast inexperience, when you actually have no idea how difficult it's going to be.
Yeah, then you just go and do it.
So, to be honest here.
Yes, thank you so much, Bonnie. Let's give it up for Bonnie. Thank you.
Thank you.